there, my name is Tara from TaraLee Naturals, and today I'm going to share with you guys how I make my own Castile soap from scratch. So over like a year ago, I did a video just like this. I'll link it down below if you guys want to go watch it. And it was actually the first time I ever made Castile soap, and it's one of my most popular videos, but I really don't feel like it's that good of a tutorial and a very informative video on how to make Castile soap. So I decided to remake this for you guys. So I will link my recipe down below because I actually found this recipe from a blog, so all credit goes to them. They're the ones who came up with the recipe, not me. So to start out, what you're going to want to do is measure out your olive oil. And you can actually use any other kind of vegetable oil to make this Castile soap. Other people pronounce it Castile soap. That's actually how it's supposed to be pronounced, but I pronounce it Castile soap. So I went ahead and measured 680 grams of olive oil, and then I went ahead and poured it into my 6-quart crock pot. And you want your crock pot to be a minimum of 6 quarts because this recipe is pretty big. Then next you're going to want to measure 454 grams of coconut oil. And again, like I said before, you can use any other vegetable oils you like as long as it measures out to the measurement of vegetable oils that I'm using here. So after you measure out your coconut oil, go ahead and pour your coconut oil into the crock pot to go along with the olive oil. And then you're going to want to turn your crock pot on a high heat. So keep the lid off. And next we are going to measure out our water. And I like to measure the water in a really thick, very strong, sturdy glass bowl, but you can also use a plastic container for this. And you're going to want to measure 907 grams of distilled water. Be sure you're using distilled water. Then next, grab a plastic bowl and measure out your potassium hydroxide. And we are using potassium hydroxide here, not sodium hydroxide. Sodium hydroxide is used to make bar soap. Potassium hydroxide is used to make liquid soap. So go ahead and measure out 265 grams of potassium hydroxide. So make sure you have on gloves, goggles, and even a protective mask if you would like when you're measuring out the potassium hydroxide, because this stuff is dangerous. If it gets on your skin, it burns. And if you want, keep some vinegar handy because vinegar actually helps neutralize the burn from potassium hydroxide, so keep that handy if you'd like. So after you measure out your potassium hydroxide, keep on your gloves, keep on your goggles, keep on your mask, and carry out the potassium hydroxide in the water outside or to a well-ventilated room. I prefer doing this outside because it's a really strong odor, and this is why I recommend a mask. So once you're outside, I like to set the water on the ground, and then I will gently pour the lye solution into the water, and then I like to stir this right afterwards. And I stir this using little like wooden skewers. That way I can just throw away the little wooden skewers afterwards. I don't have to worry about cleaning them or anything. Mix this up until the lye solution completely dissolves, and you'll see all kinds of smoke come off this. Don't breathe in the smoke. It's strong odor. This is why I recommend a mask. So once all the potassium hydroxide has been completely dissolved into the water, and once all the water is completely clear, and then carefully carry in your lye solution back inside, and I just set it aside. And I make sure all the oils have been warmed. Normally I just wait until the coconut oil has been completely melted in the crock pot. That way I know it's warm enough. And then you're going to want to carefully pour your lye solution into the oils. Make sure you have your gloves on, your mask on, your goggles on, just in case there's any splash. So once all the lye has been poured into the vegetable oils, you want to immediately grab an immersion blender and blend this mixture up for about 5 minutes until it slightly thickens and becomes more of like an opaque color. So after you blend it for about 5 minutes, then remove the immersion blender, and you're going to want to let this sit for about 30 minutes. So I like to set a timer for 30 minutes, and then I like to set an additional timer for 5 minutes because you're going to want to come back every 5 minutes within that 30 minutes. You don't have to mix it again for 5 minutes each time, but just give it a good mix to make sure you know everything's well combined. So once it becomes way too thick to mix with an immersion blender, or once the 30 minutes is up, then you're going to want to lid the crock pot and keep it on a high heat and let it sit for about 3 hours. And within that 3 hours, come back every 30 minutes and give it a good mix. With a wooden spoon is what I like to use, but as long as you have a spoon that is strong enough and won't break, because this mixture is really hard. And I like to like fold it over on top of itself just to make sure it's well combined. And you want to come back and do this every 30 minutes. And through this process, it will kind of change to a different texture through each 30 minutes. It'll become like a runny white liquid at first, and it becomes more of like a puffy taffy texture, until eventually near the end of 3 hours, it becomes a yellowy, clear, like thick, translucent gel. After this 3 hours is up, I normally like to wait till like 3.5 hours just to be safe. Then you're going to want to do a pH test. And you don't need pH strips to do this. All you need to do is boil half a cup of water, and then I like to pour it into this little glass container I have here, and then take a golf ball sized blob of the soap mixture and then plop it into the boiling water, and you're going to let this sit until it completely dissolves. And once it's completely dissolved and there is no like layer of scum on the top of the water, and as long as it's like basically translucent, it doesn't need to be completely white. You might have like a yellowish color to it, but as long as it's basically translucent and there's no scum on the top, then that means the lye or the potassium hydroxide has been completely cooked out of your soap mixture. And what I also like to do is I take these little pH strips. I bought these on eBay. They're pretty inexpensive. I'll link them down below for you guys if you want to purchase them. And grab one little strip and then dip it into the mixture. And as long as it is like a pH of around 9 or 10, then it's done. That means the lye is completely cooked out and you're good to go. So then now you're going to want to dilute your soap mixture, because this is a very strong soap mixture. You don't need it to be this strong. So what you're going to do is dilute it down with 10 cups of distilled water. I've heard of other people using glycerin during this process instead of water. I personally never tried it. So if you've tried it or you see a video out there of someone trying it, let me know down in the comments below, because I personally would like to give it a go. But I don't like to fix things that aren't broken, if you know what I mean. This recipe's worked out for me for like 2 years, and I hate to change it now for something that doesn't work out. So let me know if you tried it with glycerin, and let me know how your results turned out. I personally like to dilute it down with water. So after you have it filled up with 10 cups of distilled water, go ahead and take your spoon and try to like break up the soap mixture as well as you can. It's gonna be really hard to do this, but I just like to go through and try to break it up a little bit. So after you've mixed it up a little bit, you're gonna want to lid your crock pot and turn the heat back down to warm. This is a very important part. If you leave it on high, it'll bubble over and just cause a huge mess. I know this from experience. So turn it down to warm, and you're gonna wanna let this sit for 8 hours or so. I normally end up letting it sit overnight, and once the morning comes, or once 8 hours is over, then come back to it, take off the lid, and give it a good mix, and make sure everything has been dissolved into the water. And sometimes, actually most of the time, every time I've made it, there ends up being a layer of scum on the top of the soap. This is completely fine. This happens all the time. So what you're going to want to do is grab 1 or 2 more cups of distilled water, pour it into the soap mixture, put the lid back on your crock pot, keep it on warm, let it sit for about an hour or 2, then come back, and normally the layer of scum will be completely gone. If it's still there, add maybe like 1 or 2 more cups of water. You don't want to dilute it down too much, but normally it'll be gone by then. So once the layer of scum is completely gone, what I do is I keep the lid on so nothing gets in the soap mixture. I turn the heat off completely, unplug the crock pot, and I let it sit for about a day. That way I know it's been completely cooled. And what I like to do is I just grab the same container that I used for the distilled water, because adding a little bit more distilled water in it doesn't hurt. And normally I empty out a whole gallon of distilled water through this process. So I use a funnel and I grab a ladle, and I just ladle it all into this container. But if you're not going to use the distilled water container, make sure whatever container you're using is completely clean, completely dry of whatever else has been in it, because you don't want any contaminants to be getting in your soap. So normally I get about a gallon of soap through this process, and sometimes I get a little bit more than a gallon because it gets really foamy on the top of the gallon jug and I can't put any more Castile soap in it. So I end up filling up like a little bit of another gallon jug. So here is a lather test, and you really only need a tiny bit to get it to lather up. And this stuff, it bubbles up so much. It's a pretty strong soap. And if you guys didn't know, I actually sell homemade skincare products over on my Etsy shop. So go over there and check that out. I also sell this Castile soap if you would like to go purchase it. I have a free shipping code down in the description box, along with a 20% off coupon as well. So that is my process on how I make Castile soap. If you guys have any more questions, or if you have any suggestions, leave them down in the comments below. I'm always down for suggestions, and I know this is a very intimidating, kind of like hard process, so I understand if you guys have a lot more questions. I'll answer them for you guys down in the comments. And just to give you guys a heads up, this is a very intimidating process the first time you do it, but once you do it, and after about the 3rd time, it's so easy. It becomes just natural, and you realize it's not that hard. It's pretty easy. It's just really time consuming and doesn't really involve very many ingredients at all. So it becomes a very simple process after you do it a lot. So I hope you guys enjoyed, and I hope this is a way better updated version than the last video. I will link the last video down below if you guys want to go watch it for any reason. It's more of like a vlog rather than a tutorial, and that's kind of more of what I intended it to be, kind of like a fun, entertaining, kind of slightly informative vlog of you guys watching me make Castile soap for the first time. And it got way more views than I expected. It's my most popular video. So I hope you guys I'll refer to this video instead because it's way more informative. And I know a lot more than I did like 2 years ago. So I hope you all enjoyed. Hope you all have a great week. And I will see you guys next time. Lots of love from TaraLee. Peace.